Okay, it looks like we are live, and this is pretty momentous, guys, because we haven't done one of these before. But with Epic UGM just behind us, and my texts blowing up this whole week with people saying, what should I think about this? Like, what does this all mean for the industry? I just thought we should hash it out with a group that actually knows what they're talking about. So the three people that I invited, who were kind enough to join us for this, Graham Walker, who actually was just there at Epic UGM, so he's going to share some of his insights. We've got Brendan Keeler, Health API guy, as some of you know him, who is actually joining us from paternity leave. So he is incredible. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, Alex Lebrun, and I apologize if I butchered your lovely French name, from Nabla, the CEO. So we'll talk about everything from just the news itself to why we think it's important, what's not important to us, and then, of course, just everything that we think you folks in the industry should know. And I'll start by saying it's funny how like this event has become the equivalent in our industry of like a Apple WWDC for developers. It's just that significant. So, Graham, you're actually there. So tell us a little bit about your observations from Verona. And I know you took a bunch of notes, so just give us some like gossip from the mothership.
Yeah, well, it was a sci-fi theme, so there was a mothership for sure. Thank you. I don't know if I actually know what I'm talking about, but I'll give you my opinions for sure. Um, they had a number of features that they announced. They talked about the ways they normally focus, talking about helping clinicians, helping health systems, and helping patients. Uh, on the patient side, they talked about this concept of My Chart Central. So right now, if you go to multiple health systems, you have to log in with a different account. This will be a centralized kind of OAuth process where you can access all of your care from Stanford and from UCSF and from Kaiser Permanente, all with one login and access all your records, which I think has been a long time coming and helps for our fragmented healthcare system for sure. I'm sure we'll get into the ambient scribe discussion. Some of the other things that I thought were interesting. They talked about their AI synopsis tools they're working on, some operational predictions. So not in the generative space, but more in the predictive AI space. And then talked about some technology features like virtual nursing for kind of second sign off for high risk medicines. The last two things I'll call out. They talked about changing their pricing for their AI tools. The Epic, I mean, they almost never talk about pricing at all. They certainly don't mention dollar signs and how much anything costs, but they are going
It's a
from
lot.
yeah, they are going from a as you go model to all you can eat model to certainly try to encourage more systems to adopt these tools. And, I think frankly, these costs will continue to come down over time. And so I think it probably makes sense for them to move to that. And then certainly I think the last thing that we'll probably cover is their Cosmos AI, their large medical model, as they're calling it. I have some opinions on that. Um, yeah, overall, sci-fi theme, very high level ideas for how AI could work in their ecosystem. Um, yeah,
And what was you saw Judy, right? It looked like she was on stage from what I could glean from the
yeah.
press.
Judy was there in a purple wig and a sci-fi vest.
And did you just get the sense of just like a lot of enthusiasm? Did people just seem, at least from the Epic side, that they felt like what they were doing was very cutting edge and momentous and all that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the Cosmos AI thing almost seemed like the Steve Jobs one more thing concept where they, I thought they were going to spend a lot of time on the ambient stuff. They kind of buried the lead there, I think maybe intentionally. Um, and then the Cosmos AI stuff certainly was a surprise and shock to me. I've been reading the paper. It's a very dense paper, but if it's real, it potentially is a very different way of thinking about medical events and things that can happen to patients in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to come back to that, but
Yeah.
Brendan, I'm going to throw this question over to you of just like what was actually announced, because I think Graham made a good point that we were all expecting a lot of heat and attention on the ambient scribe, and that did come, but it was with Microsoft, which I have so many questions about, and a little bit buried, I thought, as well. But then it seemed like Cosmos was really the thing that they wanted you to pay attention to. So would love to hear, like, there were also some assistants that I read about, an assistant that art, which I think was associated more with the scribing, another one called Penny. So give us like a little bit of your take on just the breadth of what we saw, and then maybe some of the relevance.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are the headliners, right? Those are everyone on LinkedIn has been tweeting about. Art, Emmy, Penny. These aren't new things. These are just productization. They are marketing and labeling of a co-pilot, three co-pilots, right? One for patient, one for clinical, one for back office. And if you actually like peel it back, you're like, wait a minute. Art, let's take for instance the clinical one. Well, that's kind of the ambient scribe functionality they were partnering with many scribes for, right? Abridge, Nabla, Microsoft, whichever scribe the health system would choose, like that's included in art. But so is lookalikes, something they had already announced and talked about in terms of providing these lookalike patients as part of your co-pilot experience. And so is clinical decision support. And so like you actually peel it back and you see art has existed for like 2 or 3 UGMs. And like many things, like almost every vendor conference, but especially Epic, you can kind of trace the lineage across it and, look like a genius when you predict something that they were going to announce. And so that's what I'd say is like those co-pilots, buzzy, and like they're very much a marketing and productization positioning against where many of the ambience and other clinical co-pilots are heading, which is this this tool that is beyond a scribe. And so if you look at our colleague on here, over at Nabla, they're partnering to do some of the HEC coding stuff, right? Like all of this is converging. And so that's how I think about those co-pilots. I thought what was kind of interesting to me is there's one co-pilot missing. That's the front desk co-pilot. We see a lot of, eFax and processing type startups that are handling, what the scheduler or registrar might do. And they didn't have a fun name for those functionalities, but they are there, right? Like they announced like this eFax AI stuff. And so I did think it was interesting. They chose not to productize that. And maybe that's because Emmy, the patient facing one, handles many of those sort of
Or
Hippocratic.
maybe we have like another kind of announcement coming with another girl's name
That's
that
right.
like every parent everywhere is going to be groaning because they're like, oh God, I just named
Why
my
did I
child
name my
Emmy.
kid? Yeah, just wiping out really good, millennial names. And so, but the things I think are interesting, just to go through them, because we're going to spend a lot of time on Cosmos and the Scribe and stuff. Customer wins that were big. You see a theme of state government, right? They're going after state governments rather than the federal, because Oracle has locked up many of the federal opportunities. You see them sneakily. They announced Quest first for Aura, but supposedly it was what we're hearing is for Beaker, their lab information system. So that's a huge, monumental reference lab win that I think is as big as the Scribe, if not bigger. It shows Beaker, which I think we've known for a long time, is getting close to prime time as an LIS, but you're taking this one of the top 2 labs in the country. Philips also signed on for Aura, which is fixing over some old wounds between their relationship. And then in the Tapestry side, so for the payer, not the payer platform, but their core administrative system for payers, that historically has been for payviders, Kaiser, Scan Health Plan or whatever. And now they announced three major national or state plans, right? BCBS Alaska, BCBS Arkansas or something, and then Humana.
Humana, yeah.
Yeah, and that's huge. Tapestry has been, you talk to anybody, like, well, like this is a sign that their strategy of using that payer platform and Tapestry to penetrate that market that's dominated by Cognizant and others may be working. And I think that is lost in the ambient noise, if you will. The other things, the other systems of record, that they're taking out, cell therapy, blood bank, electronic fetal monitoring. They already announced CTMS, but they put a lot more oomph into it. Orthodontics, occupational health is a huge market that's similar to EHR, but has Cority and these other players. And then lastly, but potentially most importantly, ERP, right? As a hedge against Epic or Oracle's main counter to them, which is, okay, Epic says they're integrated, but we have the full integrated system that you need to run your business, your large academic health system. And so I thought those were all, and thanks to John Lynn, because again, I'm in Portland, Oregon. I wasn't in Verona, unfortunately, because of my son Julian, which I love him, and it's been great to hang with him. But this was a tough one to miss. John Lynn at Healthcare IT Today put together a really great summary that everyone should check out if they really want the blow by blow. But to me, we're going to spend a lot of time on Cosmos, which the network effects are wild to think about from a product's perspective, and then the Scribe and ambient situation is huge. But don't underestimate all these tactical strikes against small systems of record that have existed within the EHR or the health system ecosystem.
I think what you're saying is that if there was a shot across the bow, it may have been more to the competition, the direct competition, which is really Oracle and Cerner versus a bridge. And
I think that's right. You broke up for me. Well, sorry, you broke up for me a sec.
Go ahead.
That's right. Like they're saying, okay, you want to come after me, Oracle, with your new shiny EHR? That's great, but we're going to have ERP too, and it's going to be good enough, and we're going to have all these other submodules that mean that you have to come in and replicate all that, and that's a tall order. And so the challenge for Oracle only continues to grow. They're taking big swings, but Epic's not sitting pat in terms of what they're doing. Oh, the last thing. Is a new health grid-esque offering. I thought this was killer, and apparently got lots of applause, but not that much chatter. Is the specialty society sort of tool to allow for registries to have much more automated data flowing to them. That is really, really painful manual work today, and so if they can sign on these, American physician, blah blah blah,
American College of Surgeons, yeah.
Maybe Graham, you have thoughts about that, but that seemed like it was really, really impactful and meaningful to a lot of physicians out there.
Yeah, we should come back to that. And by the way, folks, if you have questions, I can already see a bunch coming through. So we will reserve some time for them. So please just feel free to throw a question out in the comments, and I'm monitoring it live. Alex, you've probably been asked about this just nonstop as well, given your company being in the scribing space, but a little bit different than the ambiances and the abridges of the world, with the big focus on inpatient. So tell us a little bit about just your take on what we learned, what we saw announced, and who do you agree that the competition that should feel most threatened here would be an Oracle and a Cerner? Like, how do you think the scribing companies will kind of react to this?
Yeah, so the biggest surprise for us was the fact that they partner with Microsoft, DAX, Dragon, to power ambient scribe. We knew for at least a year that they would announce ambient AI, but it was a big surprise, I think, for everyone, that they chose to partner with someone, and that this person is Microsoft. And in the last 45 years or 50 years, Epic always preferred to work by themselves. They don't really like to depend. They don't like any kind of dependency, product or financial, and so it's a very, very striking that they chose to use another product. And there may be different reasons for that. I'm sure Brendan has many theories beyond that. First, it's funny because we've heard sometimes, scribing is a commodity now. It's easy to do with ChatGPT. And the fact that such a powerful company as Epic, and they have very good engineering teams, and decided that somehow they don't want to do this by themselves. So it's interesting to see maybe it's not that much commodity if Epic chose to work with Microsoft. Now for us, it's always nice somehow when you've been working on something for 5 years every day to see that, wow, Epic is announcing it. It's a validation, and then okay, the world will be different tomorrow. But overall, we are quite excited, and what we learned these last 3 years since we started to deploy our ambient AI product with a healthcare organization is that 3 years ago it was a one-size-fits-all product. It does documentation, the same for everyone, no customization, no personalization, no specialty, no difference between specialties, let alone organization requirements. And more and more, fast forward 3 years, we see that what our customers want is a lot of personalization, very different templates, different ways to work, and they expect ambient AI products to be able to adapt to themselves. And I think it will be maybe harder to do at scale for Epic, at least in the coming years. So this is how we see these things evolving. And the deeper we go into workflows, because again, documentation has always been a starting point, like a wedge into these workflows. Now we do coding, CDI, pre-charting, summarization. The real goal is for us to do this, infiltrate these workflows. And the deeper you go, the more variability you have for each customer. And I think the real goal of a good product will be to be able to support this variability. And so we'll see how Epic plus Microsoft, two big companies together, can handle that in front of pure native AI startups like us.
Yeah, anyone on the panel have thoughts on this Microsoft, why them? I see a comment in the chat that there's been some hinting of a collaboration for some time. I mean, they're both obviously big companies, so it makes sense from that perspective. But, Epic also has partnerships with, several of the startup companies. I believe that they have invested in at least one of the startup companies that I'm aware of in this space. So would love to hear from the group just why Microsoft. Any theories?
Yeah, I definitely have opinions on this. I think I completely agree with you, Alex. It does call into question the idea that Epic wants to build everything themselves. I think Epic clearly still wants to control the user experience, control the data flow, but they seem to be fine with Microsoft building out the tool. I mean, the other thing that caught my attention that seemed a little strange was like they announced that they're gonna like license this out to this like combo product of Microsoft Notes, or like maybe Dax has some note templates or something like that. And Epic's new ambient thing that they would license that out to other people. It seemed a little strange that they want to sell their vision to I assume startups in the outside world, but don't want to partner with a startup. They want to partner with Microsoft. I think Microsoft is in this mostly for Azure. I mean, they can drive every health system onto Azure if they're also using the Epic platform, and it's a cloud play for them. They get to kind of upsell on not moving data outside of the Azure cloud piece. So I think that's probably where it's coming from. And Microsoft has had this relationship through Nuance for, I mean, quite a while now. One could probably argue that's why Microsoft acquired Nuance way back when, was to get their foot in the healthcare door with Epic, who traditionally has not partnered with anybody, like you said.
Yeah, and another comment coming through in the chat that a lot of legacy systems love Microsoft. So, from that perspective, it's I think it makes sense. Any other thoughts on Microsoft before we move on, Brendan?
Yeah, just disambiguating two very active areas of discussion that have occurred on LinkedIn. First is, should Epic make a scribe? And the answer is yes. And that is the right thing to do as a system of record, and they are late to the game to do so. They're the last major EHR, aside from Meditech, who has said, hey, here's our homegrown scribe. They also, while doing so, should they allow other scribes to connect? Yes, that is the best possible outcome for their provider customers, is full choice. And actually, to date, they've been very good at doing so. Nabla is in their toolbox. They have workshop partners. They have a dozen other scribes in their toolbox, and they've built custom-built APIs to allow this really deep and seamless integration. So Maybe Alex says, no, there's other EHRs doing better. That's probably true, but they're doing pretty well. And they're investing a lot historically into that has allowed for a very competitive ecosystem. So that's, should they build a scribe? What was very surprising is, should they build a scribe with a select partner? And the optics of this release, the way that they released it, are very confusing because it's unclear, is this the application layer partnership or is this just an infrastructure layer partnership? The latter is super defensible. Epic said, we need to build this. We don't want to figure out the API or the application layer. Microsoft is already our partner. We're already using Azure for Nabla. We're already using Azure for a dozen other services like Hello World. We're just going to use that because we don't want more dependencies. That's rational. But if so, why say Dragon is our partner? Why say, the optics of this were really bungled, quite frankly, if that's the case. And if it's the former, holy moly, there's a bunch of antitrust and information blocking risk in taking this approach. And so I think, again, harkening back to John Lynn's article, he has a really good quote. The only press release outside that Epic has done that says, it sort of hints that the AI native charting is using Dragon as infrastructure. So I would read in and make your own take about, it says Microsoft will supply Epic with Dragon transcription and diarization, and then Epic will create the note. So Epic owns the note creation, it sounds like. And if that's true, it's infrastructure. And they should have said, we're using Azure, because now they're inviting all this consternation. In the last piece, it say customers can use third parties to do ambient AI as they do that. So they say, oh, you know what, it's still open for anyone else to compete. So like, my whole takeaway is like, why not handle marketing better? And then I'm like, oh wait, it's because it's Epic. That's the one thing they do very, very terribly.
I will say, from my whole experience, like I was in media for like almost a decade, and I'm aware of Epic having one PR person that maybe lasted 3 years. And I don't believe they've had any additional communications. I mean, maybe things have changed in the subsequent years, but it's just not part of their DNA. It's like the largest, quietest company. And I don't think press are even invited to UGM, as far as I know.
They've changed in the past 3 years. They got a new head of marketing. They're inviting people.
Okay.
But it's like drinking the UGM, in contrast to WWDC and Dreamforce and stuff. It's like anyone who's not a customer is drinking through the straw or like trying to peer through the keyhole. And everyone else, any other, Dreamforce, anyone can sign up more or less. And so I think that they've gotten better, but it's not surprising that this might just be a marketing mistake. Or they're just arrogant enough to think, you know what, we can use Dragon at the application level and get away with it in terms of antitrust and information blocking. And if so, they're stupid, is what I would say.
Brendan, I just want to jump in and say I agree. I mean, Judy on stage said that she was kind of framing it as, well, we've heard that ambient is too expensive, and so we want to provide a cost-effective solution. But I don't think that. To me, that sounds like a way to try to pretend like you're the good guy when you just want to undercut the competition by giving a seamless product that's seamlessly integrated with your main product. And I don't know that doesn't seem really fair to me, to coach it in, oh, well, this thing is so expensive, so we're going to give it away or lose money or break even on it and just cut out the competition. To me, that doesn't seem fair when I could predict probably very clearly that either some money or a lot of power has exchanged hands between Epic and Microsoft. So it doesn't feel right to me to say, well, we're the good guys. We're going to make this cost effective for all the health systems who can't afford ambient, which is a great goal, but then quietly not be transparent that like this was probably a massive deal with the CEOs of both companies where a lot of power or money has exchanged hands.
Well said. Now, Alex probably has a ton of things to say, but the line between competition and anti-competition is really important. And the only way to avoid it entirely is to not compete. And they have chosen to compete ostensibly or in a stated fashion to lower the price and offer a floor to their customers. And that is something they should be doing from a strategic perspective. And given where they sit in the market, they have to toe the line from antitrust, because if they do what you said, if they undercut from a price perspective, that is against federal law from an antitrust perspective. And they have 2 private antitrust cases against them right now. So you have to imagine, Nina Khan was looking at them. I know it's less of an antitrust environment now under the Trump, but they are still doing antitrust. And you could better believe the FTC will be looking at it. as they make these moves. And so if they drive out, if they use their market power to drive out competition, they're going to be under have a ton of problems. Furthermore, in healthcare, we have information blocking laws that proactively and prospectively allow Nabla to go and say, we have the right to EHI exchange. And so we have these two levers that no one in the market can they both be used against more effectively than Epic right now. And so that particular market, yes, could it be anti-competitive? Of course, but that is the dynamics of tech, and only in this market do we have this power to hit back against Epic as a disruptor. We, as if I'm Alex and other scribes, but any third-party solution has the ability to push back on EHRs through information blocking, and has the ability to push back on Epic given their size and market presence. And so I think
a lot of the like disruptors have already come out and said, look, Alex, love to hear from you on this, but like, you know, I saw an article that came out from the CEO of a bridge recently, said, we're going to be making some acquisition ourselves in areas like potentially, I mean, I can imagine revenue cycles being one big area they might move into, but we have to now expand. And so it does seem like, even though nobody is willing to say out loud, this did feel fairly competitive, I think companies are making moves, and you're starting to see that in order to like basically try to shore up the market themselves and really take advantage of what they have now, which is a lot of goodwill amongst providers. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, we never hear from our customers that it's too expensive, you know, across 150 health systems. But what they say, we want you to support clinicians for more workflows, especially, you know, RCM, but also upstream workflows everywhere. So this is what they want today, and they want to see clear, demonstrable ROI from these workflows. They're not saying it's too expensive. So there is a race now to deliver, to automate, and support all these adjacent workflows like RCM. And so the real competition in ambient AI now has been already actually, but it will reinforce this race toward we more or less have the same vision, but it's a matter of execution now. Who can deliver these horizontal AI assistant to clinicians faster?
Absolutely.
And how awesome is that? More competition, more innovation, lower prices. Let's go. Like, as long as Epic and other EHRs don't behave anti-competitively, this is the best possible outcome. Is everyone is forced to use all that money. There's no shortage of money sloshing around in the ambient space to go do the next level of things.
Yeah. And the thing that has been waking us at night is not how we fund this, how we do it, how the EHR integration and the capacity of EHR to block us was a big worry for us. And as Brendan say, we feel that Epic being more involved in the game, it will be harder for them to be anti-competitive. And so we are actually optimistic that for all the reasons Brendan is explaining much better than me, it will be a fair game. We'll have more access to the same integration points, all competitors and Epic included, and this is what this is the only thing we need.
So what do you think it will be a fight for, Alex? Like, because people have said it's going to just be about pricing, and so it's going to force pricing down, and that's going to lead to the commodity problem. Some people have said it's going to be a fight over a suite of the best, who can make the best set of products, and how do you compete on that basis? I mean, maybe against Epic, one could argue, because it's a legacy company, that a disruptor could win, but then you've got very well-funded disruptors. So how do you think about what gives you the edge in this new, arena where now Epic and Microsoft have entered the ring?
So for us, the must-have is a full suite of products. This horizontal integration where you have a seamless process with your AI assistant, from pre-charting, summarizing, to doing the encounter, getting clinical decision support during the encounter, then having your RCM, CDI, RCM taken care of. So everybody is speaking about that, but it's really nothing, almost nothing has been deployed at scale yet. And having this full integration of processes, workflows is very difficult to do. and this will be the new must-have. And the clear ROI will come from these workflows, not from documentation per se. We see that documentation ROI is more like an emotional ROI because your clinicians are happy, feel better, less burnout, but it's not a financial ROI in documentation per se. The financial ROI will come from this expansion. And then it's very difficult to build this because our customers are expecting more and more customization, and they have all their specific processes, way to work, different. I never met two physicians who agree on the best way to do one particular thing. And so you have different organizations and different physicians inside the organization, and you have nurses and physicians. And for any software company, delivering this kind of automation with a high level of customization possible is very, very difficult. And I think this is what will decide the outcome of the race between the ambient AI vendors now.
So I see a lot of questions in the chat about antitrust. I see a lot of questions about AI, and we'll get to some of those. But I did want to ask myself about Epic and AI, because one of the things I've been wondering is, have they been underestimated in the market for their ability to build their own AI tools? And I think you saw some of that announced on stage, and I think you saw them present some of their own kind of AI researchers as well, and kind of give them more of a public forum. And I hear people say all the time that they just don't have those internal capabilities. In this group, have thoughts on just, does Epic have, the right kind of AI talent on the team, or does it need to work with a disruptor or a big tech company to get there?
I can certainly weigh in. Look, I have mixed feelings about Epic because I think Epic does really good work. I think they have really smart people working there. And they are highly effective at getting their job done. I think it's really one of the most powerful things that Epic does is they do what they say they're going to do in health tech, and that can't be promised in every sector of health technology. But Judy gets up on stage and says, hey, look, here's the things I promised we were going to do last year. It's a year later. Look, we check, we did them all. So I think Epic does a great job with a lot of technology. And I think that includes AI. I went to the Physician Advisory Council. They are using and deploying AI in really thoughtful ways inside of workflow to help with large problems like clinical summarization. Take somebody's 12-day hospital stay and turn it into something that can be documented easily and is low on hallucinations and confabulations, but also like little annoying things like medication reconciliation. If they're not discrete data, AI can turn that into discrete data, so it's easier and better to use for patients and clinicians in the future. So I do think Epic has significant AI talent, and I don't want to take up all the time. I think their Cosmos AI is probably some pretty good evidence of that as well.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Cosmos. Brendan, I might throw this over to you because I did finally kind of read the paper this morning, and it's it's still pretty early, but it's super interesting. Like this, the predictive capabilities that they're able to produce with the data set that they have of just de-identified patient information. It was like over 100 million people. Like, it's incredible. And that is because they now have become so dominant in the market. Brendan, do you have any thoughts on what they shared on Cosmos?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly impressive. I think there's some people quibbling on LinkedIn now and being like, oh, it's not an LLM. It's like, well, yes, okay, people building LLMs go and debate that, but like if the outcomes are what they say are, then this is really, really powerful, and embedding that back in the application is really powerful. I think the more interesting thread to pull on for me of all this is, what is Cosmos, right? Like, and how are they using data in the way that we expected? And so there's some that have posited that this is a little bit hypocritical, or that this is nefarious, right? That Cosmos says very much like, we're not selling your data. Data is never sold, but then it's commercialized back to the customer base. So I think there's something from an optics perspective, right, to unpack there. for Epic and for others to visibly address. There is this governing council that is elected from the customer base that I think has influence on how it can be used back in products or for research and things like that. But and it's certainly not what we see for like Veradigm or Athena or like other EHRs that outright have just sold data to data brokers, right? That doesn't occur via Cosmos. But as they do more with this data back into their own product with a cornered resource by virtue of this network effect, this is no offense meant the scribes and the scribe wars and all the dialogue there, but like this is the biggest network effects are the biggest possible moat you can have. And they had Care Everywhere, and that was a big network effect. And now they're moving on to Cosmos and they're building other network effects. And that is the impregnable moat. And so I think there's things to be teased out there in terms of how access is provisioned, the optics of it, that are going to be really important to consider and for them to manage going forward. So like that's what's really interesting to me. And Graham, I don't know if you have insights from being there.
I just want to say two things. I couldn't agree more, Brendan. Look, if they made the argument that as they get more data, their Cosmos AI improves, and that may certainly be true. To me, if they're pitching that they have this tremendous ability to do better predictions and help the doctors deliver better care, to me, that feels like a public good. And it feels weird to me that why is Epic the arbiters of or the controllers of what is a public good? That they have this data set, and hey, if you promise to give us more data, we will give you better data. But to your point, they don't talk about the fact that that's a network effect that builds a moat for them, and there's a lot of commercial power that comes with that tool as well. So that doesn't feel right to me. That like if they're building the world's best data set, then why is it controlled by one company? That feels like more of a nonprofit play, or that it needs to be under the control of maybe a third party that has ethicists and med legal people and privacy people and patient advocates and this whole thing. The second thing, and don't want to derail, but the second thing is I'm starting to really see Epic move into the kind of the clinical content space. I mean, this large medical model is arguably predicting heart attacks and strokes. Epic for a long time has stayed away. They've said, we build the tools, we help the doctors, but the doctors are going to do the clinical content. And between ambient scribes and this ME AI agent that is going to answer questions that patients have about their lab results, they're starting to enter the clinical space. It's a gray zone, but I feel like there used to be a big separation between the two, and we're not seeing that anymore. And, as a physician, that does concern me as well, that we now have the world's most powerful EHR company now wanting to deliver clinical answers and clinical content and clinical predictions as well.
I'm seeing a lot of questions on this, Graham, and I'm going to actually flip over to the questions that we've gotten in chat and comments. Keep them coming because I am monitoring them, and some of them are making me laugh. So Bjorn Hansel had a question on this, Graham, that I think is pretty relevant to what you just said. Am I hearing that Epic's strategy is to expand their role as a system of record while hanging a few steps behind innovators to add new UI features that increase the end user experience and efficacy? That sounds kind of like what you just said.
Yeah, they want to be the system of record for everybody. And they're not wrong. If they have more data, they probably are going to have better predictions. That's great. But that should be great for everybody in the world, especially, I think, when this data is created by physicians and nurses and pharmacists, and it is about human beings, is about patients. And so it feels a little weird for that to be in the control of a private company for me.
And that's what I mean about like the optics, because I think right that they're saying
Yes.
the way they've structured is like, oh, the governing council decides, and like the data is not ours, but then we're creating visualizations and like they're trying to toe this line of like lookalikes is just an app that's built on with the permission of the governing council, which owns this, and whatever. It's like that is really a hard line to draw. But the alternatives are like, don't do anything, right? Like, which is what they didn't have Cosmos till a few years ago, and that's what they did, or to go full bore and sell it. And so I think they're right to try and toe this line. And just like partnering and stuff, it's like these are optics, this is marketing, and so perhaps we see a bolus of hiring into their marketing department to manage all this shit going forward. So like they need to project this outward, because otherwise the assumptions are nefarious, or perhaps they're right. Maybe the nefarious perceptions are right, but assuming they are a rational organization moving forward with an intent to help, because that's all we can do here. Otherwise the takes are pretty lukewarm. Like they need to toe the line and market this effectively if they want to get to where they're going. The alternative is to not play ball at all, not to do anything here.
Alex, I might turn it to you because we've had a few questions about just like on the macro, what should Epic be worried about right now? Some people are saying antitrust, some people are saying just like big cuts from the federal government. Some people think maybe it's the disruptors or big tech. If you were Epic, what would you be most worried about and why?
No, I think Epic is doing so many different things. They can do almost everything. Every startup, every project in healthcare, you could tell people, yeah, but Epic could do it, and it could kill you. So it will be hard, I think, to drive. Even them need to focus a little bit. And I think the challenge for Epic will be to not do absolutely everything in all directions for providers, for payers, for patients, but to select their battles. And I wouldn't like to be in Judy's shoes, because I think it will be hard to focus the effort. They have incredibly valuable data sets. The Cosmos is probably maybe the most valuable data set in the world. And it will become still more very valuable with ambient AI, because they will get more information about each encounter, even maybe the transcription or the recording. So lots of more data than they have just from the notes in the past. By the way, I think it will attract lots of machine learning talent to Epic. So I think this is very powerful for them too. Because my previous startup was acquired by Facebook, and we had many people join Facebook just because of the data set of Facebook. The best engineers, they are excited by that, not by the package or compensation or. They can do almost everything, and I think it will be hard to decide where first.
Brendan, to your point of them needing to hire some marketing people, and I think those people would have to move to Wisconsin, just given the requirements. But that would sort of fly in the face of a lot of what they stand for. We've, those of us that have maybe gone there, not me, I've never been invited, but Epic, if you're listening, I'd love to come. But, if you read the articles written about them, I mean, you hear of bathroom stalls in which kind of the golden rules of Epic are listed out, like don't do deals,
I took pictures of those literally 3 days ago, because I had not seen them before in the bathroom. Yeah, there's
Can
3
you text
placards up.
me? Because I thought that was
Sure.
an urban legend. That's incredible.
No, yeah, they're real. Yeah.
Well, Chrissy, there's the vendor conference open in Epic next month. I'm going. You can sign up. We can go together and check it out. And they are open to media, so maybe second opinion can apply and get in.
So maybe I can go. But
Yeah,
I was
I've got a
gonna
couple
ask
journalists
you,
there. Yeah.
is there like a new era coming where maybe things start to change a little bit? Maybe they do actually start doing some deals. Maybe they do acquire like something in this, ambient scribing space. Like, is anything going to change? I doubt they would ever go public, but like, do you see any of the rules getting kind of compromised? And
Acquisition
by the way,
and merge.
before we answer this, I have to tell Matthew Holt that this is my husband's guitar, so no dice on me playing. Sorry.
Another turning point, but I can't sing. They will not merge. They will not acquire. They have the trust. So like that's not changing. What is necessitated to change? What will have to change, or they'll be broken by virtue of how we grapple with companies that get to this size and importance, is they're no longer this plucky Midwest startup. They have grown to be a market dominant, internationally growing company that is moving into adjacent industries. They are a conglomerate of sorts. And when you're a conglomerate, you're under scrutiny. And to address that scrutiny, you need to change behaviors that work for you. They're indelibly linked to your culture. And they are, right? Like we're talking about partnerships, right? The toolbox and workshop things the past 2 years, that never would have happened when I was there a decade ago. that's insane. When it first happened, I was like, what is
Absolutely.
going on here? And so they are changing, but are they changing fast enough? Are they changing in a way that the frustration that is that we have towards our healthcare system, oftentimes the frustrations we have at a system get directed towards technology. And those socioeconomic problems that we have will be directed towards the most powerful companies in the industry, right or wrong. And if they do not change the way that they interact with the markets in terms of inviting press, in terms of the openness, even when it's not useful, then they will be forced to, like we see with Apple, Google, and every other major tech company at this point, that the frustrations boil over to the point that no longer do they have the choice, but they are forced to do things that they do not want. So merge and acquire, I don't think that's not in the cards, but changing their culture, changing how they interact with the world, they must in the next decade.
And how, just because I've tried to calculate this, how big of a company do you think they are? Anybody want to weigh in on the comments? I'm like always been curious about this.
I mean,
Acquired did a really good 4-hour long like marathon, and
I didn't listen to that. I need to.
Get the transcript and throw it through ChatGPT or something. But they say like they valued it like 100 billion or something like that.
I think on my calculus said somewhere in the 80 to 100 range, so that sounds about right. It's crazy that like one of the few companies in healthcare technology that is actually worth more than 10 billion is nobody even like has a clue because it's still not public. Well, we have a couple minutes left, so any parting comments from the group on just like what we learned, maybe what you expect to see in the next couple of years, any points that you would leave everybody with who's tuning in here on LinkedIn, and just like anything that we should, maybe a prediction, like any final thoughts? I'll throw it over to Alex first.
I say something Netflix CEO said 12 years ago. He said, we have to become HBO before HBO can become us. And I think there is what's happening with Epic and the ecosystem today happens in many vertical AI situations where you have the incumbents and some AI native startups around. And so it will be very interesting to see what's happening in the next few years.
Brendan, Graham?
I can go. I'll say, look, I think Epic does great work. But like Brendan said, with great power comes great responsibility. I think telling their story more clearly and more transparency, I think for me are fundamentally important as a physician. I think it's really important that I know, have a better sense of how the data is being used. I mean, am I just ultimately building a better data set for Epic when I'm trying to deliver patient care? That's not going to feel really good to practicing doctors and nurses and pharmacists, and patients probably are going to have a say in that as well.
Yeah, we've already talked about the patient perspective, but it did not feel like it was, something that was front and center enough at this event. Brendan, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I mean, my general thought here is that people look for the fall of Epic, right? It's who all can beat them? Will be Oracle or the scribes or whatever. And I think it's actually like 3 steps upstream. It's large-scale changes to how healthcare organizations, what are the most powerful and dominant structures, right? Is it the large academic medical centers, or is it small outpatient? Is it new types of healthcare organizations that are run on AI agents entirely? Right? Those sociological changes demand different technology, and if those organizations can outcompete Kaiser Permanente and Mayo, or do so for some major profitable subsegment of the market, well, then all of a sudden, power accrues to the technology vendors that can help that novel type of care and those novel models, which Epic is under suited. They're not well suited for 10 doc practices. They are not on the radar for tech-enabled practices that are looking to AI agent everything. And so, like, if you're looking for a disruptor, it's probably there that the fall of Epic happens and the fall of the EHR happens, and not here where we will see major businesses like Nabla succeed in spite of Epic's growth and Cerner's growth and things like that. We will see major businesses occur, but we see disruption and change. Typically, tech is derivative of the society, and so society needs to change. Our regulation and policy need to change for the tech situation to change monumentally.
I could not agree with that more. And I just want to thank my incredible, seriously, these are the people that I most wanted to talk to about this, and you all agreed to join me. So you were amazing. We had dozens of comments here on LinkedIn, hundreds of people tuning in. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that we can talk about this a year from now and do it again.
That's great.
Everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.